Pride before the fall. The Galactic Concordat's grand museum of primitive technologies sparkled like a diamond among the soaring crystalline spires of New Genesis Station. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching the latest addition to the museum's collection being towed through the massive docking bay. The Defiant, Earth's last warship, looked small and obsolete against the sleek vessels of the Concordat fleet. High Curator Zixtal floated beside her, his translucent body pulsing with patterns of smug satisfaction. Fascinating specimen, wouldn't you agree, Dr. Chen? Such crude design principles. One can hardly believe your species managed interstellar travel with such limited understanding of proper engineering. Sarah kept her expression neutral, a skill honed through years of diplomatic service. Every civilization's path to the stars is unique, High Curator. She watched as the automated systems carefully maneuvered the Defiant into its display berth. The ship's scarred hull still bore the marks of its final battle, though most observers would never understand what they were looking at. The exhibition hall filled quickly with delegates from across the Concordat. Hundreds of species gathered to examine humanity's primitive achievement. Sarah recognized the bioluminescent Arcosians, the crystalline Voxri, and even a few of the energy-based Ultheri. All of them regarded the Defiant with the same mixture of amusement and condescension. "Observe the antiquated weapon systems," announced Zixtal to the gathered crowd. "Physical projectile launchers, chemical propulsion, and if our scans are correct, manual targeting systems. One can hardly imagine surviving combat with such limitations." Laughter rippled through the assembly. A Voxri ambassador raised a crystalline appendage toward the ship's hull. "Is that actually metal? Not even smart matter or quantum-locked materials." More chuckles followed. Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but maintained her diplomatic smile. If they only knew what they were actually looking at. The Defiant wasn't just Earth's last warship, it was Earth's most advanced achievement, disguised as its most primitive. "Tell us, Dr. Chen," an Arcosian delegate called out, bioluminescent patterns flickering with amusement. "Did your species really navigate through hyperspace using mathematical calculations rather than quantum consciousness?" "We worked with what we had," Sarah replied carefully. "Humanity has always believed in redundancy." Redundancy. Zixtal's form rippled with mirth. Why have backups when your primary systems can be made perfect? The Concordat eliminated system failures centuries ago through quantum certainty computing. Sarah watched as maintenance drones began attaching power feeds to the Defiant's external ports, standard procedure for museum pieces, keeping their lights on for display. She knew better. Those ports weren't for receiving power, they were for containing it. Speaking of systems, a junior curator floated forward. "We're detecting some unusual power fluctuations from the vessel. Nothing dangerous, of course, but the readings don't match our predictions for a ship of this vintage. Probably degraded power cells," Zixtal dismissed. "Primitive energy storage was notoriously unstable. We'll have our technical teams clean up the signatures before the main exhibition tomorrow." Sarah noticed something then. A brief flicker of light in the Defiant's bridge windows. To the others, it would have looked like a simple reflection. But she recognized it for what it was. A status indicator coming online. The ship wasn't nearly as dormant as everyone assumed. "High Curator," she said carefully, "perhaps I should share some of our maintenance protocols. Earth vessels can be particular about their power systems." "Unnecessary, Dr. Chen. Our technologies are more than capable of managing a derelict from a lesser age. Now let me show the delegation our newest acquisition from the Proxima colonies. Now there's a truly primitive society." As the crowd followed Zixtal to another exhibit, Sarah lingered behind. She pulled out her datapad, appearing to make diplomatic notes while actually checking encrypted frequencies. There, buried under layers of what the Concordat would consider background radiation, a familiar signal pulsed in a pattern she knew by heart. The Defiant was awake, and if it was activating now, after 50 years of silence, that could only mean one thing. The threat that humanity had sacrificed everything to stop had finally returned. Sarah only hoped the Concordat would understand their mistake before it was too late. Pride, she whispered, watching the delegates laugh at another primitive display, comes before the fall. In the empty exhibition hall, visible to no one, another status light blinked on in the Defiance bridge. Deep within the ship's supposedly crude hull, systems that didn't officially exist began their warm-up sequences. Humanity's greatest deception was about to become its greatest revelation, whether the galaxy was ready or not. The storm was coming, and Earth's last warship would show everyone why humanity had learned to hide its true strength behind a mask of primitive simplicity. Echoes of the past. Sarah's encrypted datapad vibrated at precisely 300 station time. The message was brief. Systems at 15% activation. They're coming. She slipped out of her quarters, making her way through New Genesis Station's crystalline corridors toward the museum. The night shift paid little attention to Earth's diplomatic representative, just another primitive species ambassador taking a late-night stroll. Inside the museum, the Defiant waited in darkness. But Sarah knew better. Darkness was just another form of camouflage. As she approached, her augmented reality implant, disguised as a standard diplomatic translator, revealed what the Concordat's advanced sensors couldn't see: a web of quantum energy signatures pulsing beneath the ship's primitive hull. "Hello, old friend," she whispered, placing her hand against the cold metal. The surface rippled slightly at her touch, smart metal recognizing human DNA. A small hatch appeared where none had existed before. "Dr. Chen." High Curator Zixtal's voice made her freeze. The crystalline alien floated into view, his transparent form glowing with suspicious patterns. "Rather late for a tour, isn't it?" "Couldn't sleep," Sarah replied smoothly. "Thought I'd check on our exhibit. Some of our older ships had stability issues with foreign power systems." "Yes, your species' charming obsession with redundancy." Zixtal moved closer, his sensor arrays probing the Defiance hull. "Though I must admit, we've detected some anomalies. The power draw is far higher than it should be for a vessel of this era, and our quantum scanners are having difficulty mapping its internal structure. As I said earlier, Earth ships can be particular." An alarm cut through the darkness. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the station. Sarah's augmented reality display filled with data streams she wasn't supposed to have access to. Long-range sensor feeds, defense grid status reports, and most worryingly, quantum signature analyses from the outer system. "Impossible," Zixtal whispered, his crystalline form clouding with fear. "The defense grid. It's detecting something in the void between systems. Something massive." Sarah knew what the readings meant. The Voidborn had returned, the entity that had nearly destroyed Earth 50 years ago. The reason humanity had learned to hide its true technological achievements behind a facade of primitive simplicity. "High Curator," she said urgently, "you need to disconnect the Defiant from your power grid. Now." "What? Why Wold?" The station shuddered as its first-line quantum barriers engage. Through the museum's massive windows, Sarah watched spatial distortions ripple across the stars as something began tearing its way into normal space. "Because," she continued, backing away from the ship, "in about 30 seconds, the Defiant is going to start drawing enough power to overload half your distribution network. It needs the energy for startup." As if on cue, the museum's lights flickered. The power feeds connected to the Defiant began to glow with dangerous intensity. Zixtal's sensor arrays went wild as the ship's true nature began to reveal itself. "What is this?" the High Curator demanded. "These readings, they're suggesting technology centuries beyond your civilization's documented capabilities." "Did you ever wonder," Sarah asked, watching as sections of the Defiant's hull began to shift and change, "why Earth never shared the details of how we survived our first encounter with the Voidborn? Why we seemed to regress technologically afterward, returning to primitive designs?" The ship's outer layer was transforming now, the dull metal flowing like liquid, revealing glimpses of the quantum-engineered systems beneath. systems that humanity had developed in desperate secrecy during their darkest hour. Because we learned the hard way that the Voidborn don't just consume technology, they absorb it, adapt to it. The more advanced the technology, the more quickly they learn to counter it. But they have one weakness. They struggle against simpler systems, things their hyper-evolved consciousness can't easily comprehend. Another alarm blared. The station's quantum certainty computers were starting to fail as impossible readings flooded their perfect networks. Sarah smiled grimly as she inputted an activation code into her datapad. So we hid our greatest achievements behind masks of simplicity. We built ships that looked primitive on the outside, but contained power that even the Concordat hasn't discovered yet. We learned to fight smart instead of fighting advanced. The Defiance bridge lit up, systems that had slept for 50 years awakening to their true purpose. Through the windows, Sarah could see the void between stars beginning to tear open as their ancient enemy approached. And now, she said, as emergency bulkheads began sealing throughout the station, you're about to learn why Earth's last warship isn't a museum piece. It's our insurance policy. The Defiance engines ignited, quantum fire contained within the shell of seemingly primitive thrust ports. As alerts blared and the station's perfect systems began to fail one by one, Sarah turned to the stunned High Curator. You wanted to understand human redundancy. You're about to see it in action. The question is, will your perfect, failure-proof civilization be able to adapt fast enough to survive what's coming? In the distance, the void between stars split open like a wound in reality itself. The Voidborn had returned. But this time, humanity wasn't hiding anymore. The real question was whether the Concordat would survive learning why primitive wasn't always what it seemed. The storm breaks. New Genesis Station's perfect systems were dying one by one. The Concordat's quantum certainty computers, designed to be infallible, crashed in waves as the impossible became real. Through the grand windows of the museum hall, reality itself seemed to tear apart as the Voidborn emerged from their dimensional pocket. Get to the emergency command center. Sarah ordered Zixtal as she interfaced with the Defiance systems through her disguised implants. Tell them to divert all power from the quantum defense grid to basic shields. Divert to basic shields. Zixtal's crystalline form flickered with disbelief. That's primitive technology. It won't last seconds against. The station shuddered as the first Voidborn attack hit. Where the quantum barrier should have reflected the assault, they instead absorbed it, corrupted, and failed. But the simple electromagnetic shields Sarah had requested flared to life, absorbing the impact through brute force rather than elegant quantum manipulation. Primitive works, Sarah muttered, watching as the Defiance transformation accelerated. The ship's hull now rippled like liquid metal, its true systems emerging from beneath the deceptive exterior. That's why we survived, and so many others didn't. Through the windows, the Voidborn revealed themselves fully. Their ships, if they could be called that, were impossibilities made real. Living metal and crystallized void stuff formed into shapes that hurt the mind to observe. Where they passed, the perfect order of space itself seemed to unravel. Concordat Defense Command. A voice echoed through the station speakers. Our quantum torpedoes are having no effect. The enemy absorbs or redirects every attack. We're detecting thousands of simultaneous system failures across the fleet. Sarah reached the Defiance main airlock just as another attack rocked the station. This is Dr. Chen. She broadcast on all frequencies. Your advanced targeting systems won't work. They're too predictable. Switch to manual control. Basic projectile weapons, unguided missiles, anything too simple to be corrupted. This is Admiral Vigsnell, came the reply. You expect us to abandon our superior technology for primitive weapons. The Concordat hasn't used manual targeting in 7 centuries. The Defiance airlock opened at Sarah's approach, recognizing her DNA signature. Inside, the ship was transforming just as dramatically as its hull. What had appeared to be crude mechanical controls were revealing themselves as interfaces for systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your superior technology, Sarah replied as she made her way to the bridge, "is being turned against you. The Voidborn don't just destroy advanced systems, they absorb them, learn from them, become stronger. But they can't easily corrupt simple things. Physical projectiles, manual targeting, human intuition." She reached the bridge as another blast rattled the station. Through the view screen, she could see the Concordat's mighty fleet falling into chaos as their perfect systems failed them one by one. The Voidborn ships flowed through their formation like living darkness, absorbing or redirecting every sophisticated attack. "This is why Earth went primitive after the first Voidborn War," she announced, settling into the command chair as the Defiant's true systems came fully online. "We didn't regress. We adapted. We learned to hide our advanced technology behind simple exteriors. We built ships that could think in quantum dimensions but fight with physical weapons. We made ourselves unpredictable." The Defiant's engines ignited, quantum fire contained within the shell of seemingly primitive thrust ports. The ship lifted from its display berth, artificial gravity adjusting automatically as debris floated around them in the museum's now depressurized hall. "Watch and learn," Sarah commanded, engaging the Defiant's main drive. "This is how humanity fights gods." The Defiant burst from the museum like a predator released from its cage. Its outer hull, now fully awakened, absorbed light itself, making the ship nearly invisible to conventional sensors. But Sarah could see through the disguise. Layers of quantum-engineered systems operated in perfect harmony, all concealed behind a facade of primitive technology. The first Voidborn vessel noticed them too late. The Defiant's primitive projectile weapons opened fire, launching what appeared to be simple metal slugs. The enemy's sophisticated defenses, designed to counter energy weapons and quantum attacks, couldn't adapt quickly enough to stop physical objects moving at relativistic speeds. "Impossible," Admiral Vixnill's voice crackled through the comm. "Those are just projectiles, but they're piercing void matter shields." "Nothing is impossible," Sarah replied, spinning the Defiant through a complex, evasive pattern. "That's humanity's greatest strength. We don't accept limitations. We adapt, we improvise, and most importantly, we deceive." The Defiant's quantum core pulsed, channeling power through systems that existed in 5 dimensions at once. But instead of launching advanced energy weapons, it used that impossible power to accelerate simple metal projectiles to speeds that violated physics itself. To all Concordat vessels, Sarah broadcast as the Defiant engaged another Voidborn ship, switched to manual control. "Forget your quantum targeting. Trust your instincts. Use physical weapons. Be unpredictable. Be primitive." Across the battlefield, the mighty ships of the Concordat began to adapt. Sophisticated energy weapons powered down as ancient missile tubes opened. Quantum computers fell silent as organic brains took control. The perfect order of their formation dissolved into controlled chaos. The Voidborn, for the first time, seemed to hesitate. Their living ships, used to corrupting and absorbing advanced technology, found themselves facing weapons too simple to counter and tactics too chaotic to predict. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. As the Defiant spun through space, its primitive exterior concealing power that could shake reality itself, she prepared to show the galaxy why humanity had chosen to hide its greatest achievements behind a mask of simplicity. The storm hadn't just broken. It had revealed the truth that the Concordat had been too proud to see. Sometimes the most powerful technology was the kind you couldn't detect at all. Dancing with dragons, space itself seemed to burn as the battle raged around New Genesis Station. The Defiant moved like a ghost through the chaos, its quantum-enhanced hull absorbing light and energy, while its primitive weapons wreaked havoc on the Voidborn fleet. Sarah's hands danced across controls that appeared mechanical but channeled power that could tear holes in reality. "Admiral Vixnill," she called through the comm, "form your ships into scattered clusters. Don't maintain any pattern the Voidborn can predict. And for the love of Earth, stop trying to reactivate your quantum targeting systems. The Admiral's holographic form flickered on her command display. But without quantum targeting, we're fighting blind. Our crews haven't trained for manual combat. Then it's time they learned. Sarah threw the Defiant into a spiral as void matter tendrils reached for the ship. The Voidborn adapt to patterns. The more perfect your formation, the more easily they can counter it. Chaos is your ally now. Across the battlefield, the Concordat fleet began to break apart, abandoning their elegant attack formations for seemingly random clusters. Their advanced energy weapons remained powered down, replaced by salvos of physical projectiles and unguided missiles. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. "This is madness," High Curator Zixtel's voice cut in from the station's emergency command center. "We're abandoning millennia of technological progress to fight like savages." "No," Sarah corrected, executing a maneuver that should have torn any normal ship apart. "You're learning to combine advanced technology with basic principles. Watch." The Defiant's quantum core pulsed, channeling impossible energy not into sophisticated weapons, but into its inertial dampeners and acceleration systems. The ship pulled a turn that violated physics, bringing its primitive rail guns to bear on a Voidborn vessel. Simple metal slugs, accelerated beyond the speed of light by quantum engineering, tore through living void matter like paper. "Your quantum weapons fail because the Voidborn can predict and corrupt their perfect calculations," Sarah explained as she lined up another shot. "But they can't corrupt kinetic energy. They can't predict human intuition. Use your advanced technology to enhance basic principles, not replace them." Slowly, the Concordat fleet began to adapt. Ships used quantum power to enhance their maneuverability while firing conventional weapons. Crews learned to trust their instincts rather than perfect targeting computers. The elegant dance of their usual combat style transformed into something wild and unpredictable. Multiple Voidborn signatures approaching from Sector 7. The Defiant sensors reported. The ship's AI, disguised as a simple targeting computer, highlighted approaching threats. They appeared to be adapting their void matter shields to counter kinetic weapons. "Then we adapt too," Sarah replied. "Prepare the resonance cannons. Let's show them another human trick." The Defiant's hull shifted, panels sliding aside to reveal what looked like crude acoustic generators. The Concordat ships nearby pulled back, expecting another primitive weapon. They weren't entirely wrong. "All ships in range," Sarah broadcast, "modify your shields to frequency 7 alpha. Trust me." The resonance cannons fired, sending waves of pure sound through space. The Voidborn's adapted shields, prepared for physical impacts, couldn't stop pure vibration. Their living metal hulls began to shudder and crack. "Impossible," Admiral Vixenil breathed. "You're using sound in space. The cannons create quantum resonance fields that simulate acoustic waves," Sarah explained, firing another barrage. "Simple physics enhanced by advanced technology. The Voidborn expect either primitive weapons or advanced energy attacks. They don't expect both at once." A massive Voidborn vessel, larger than any they'd yet encountered, emerged from the quantum tiers in space. Its hull writhed with corrupted energy, stolen from countless advanced civilizations. Sarah recognized the configuration from Earth's historical records. A Voidborn command node. "All ships, fall back to defensive positions," she ordered. "They're about to show us something new." The command node pulsed, and reality seemed to twist. Every active quantum system in range began to overload. Concordat ships that had tried to reactivate their advanced weapons suddenly found those weapons turning against them. "This is why Earth hid its true technology," Sarah announced as the Defiant moved to engage the massive enemy. "The more advanced technology the Voidborn absorb, the stronger they become. They're not just a military threat. They're a technological cancer, corrupting and consuming everything they touch." The command node launched tentacles of living void matter, each one capable of corrupting and absorbing any advanced technology they touched. But Sarah had been ready for this. The Defiant's hull rippled, quantum-engineered systems sliding beneath layers of simple metal armor. But humanity found a way to fight back. She continued, the defiant dancing between the grasping tentacles. We learned to hide our greatest achievements behind masks of simplicity. We built weapons too basic to corrupt, but enhanced them with technology too subtle to detect. The resonance cannons fired again, their quantum-enhanced acoustic waves synchronized with salvos of relativistic projectiles. The command node's defenses, designed to counter either primitive or advanced attacks, couldn't adapt to both simultaneously. Admiral, Sarah called as the massive enemy ship began to show signs of damage. Target these coordinates with everything you have. Physical weapons only, enhanced by your quantum power systems. Don't give them any technology to corrupt, just pure kinetic energy backed by impossible speed. The Concordat fleet opened fire as one, their advanced ships unleashing a barrage of missiles and projectiles, accelerated to velocities that should have been impossible. The combination of primitive weapons and quantum enhancement proved devastating. The command node's hull began to crack, void matter tendrils flailing, as they tried to adapt to an attack that violated their basic assumptions about how technology should progress. They had expected either primitive weapons or advanced energy attacks, not both working in perfect harmony. But Sarah knew the battle was far from over. The Voidborn never deployed a command node alone. Something bigger was coming, something that would test not just the Defiant's hidden power, but the Concordat's ability to abandon their technological pride and embrace a new way of fighting. The real question was, could an advanced civilization learn to think like humans before it was too late? A new dawn. Reality screamed as a massive quantum tear split the space above New Genesis Station. The command node's destruction had been merely a prelude. Now the true heart of the Voidborn fleet emerged. A vessel larger than some moons materialized, its hull a nightmare fusion of stolen technologies and living void matter. By the eternal stars, Admiral Vixnil whispered, "That's impossible. Our sensors indicate it's absorbing quantum energy from space itself." The world render, Sarah breathed, recognizing the massive ship from Earth's classified records. We only saw it once during the First War. It's what made us realize we had to change everything about how we fought. The massive Voidborn vessel pulsed with stolen power. Every quantum-based system in range began to fail as it absorbed and corrupted their energy. Even the Defiant's carefully hidden advanced systems trembled under its influence. All ships, power down quantum cores, Sarah broadcast. Switch to backup fusion drives. Basic shields only. Don't give it anything to corrupt. But that will leave us defenseless. Zixtal protested from the station. Our ships can barely move with such primitive power sources. The Worldrender's first attack proved Sarah's point. Beams of corrupted quantum energy lashed out, attempting to infect and absorb any advanced technology in range. Concordat ships that hadn't heeded her warning found their own weapons turning against them, their perfect systems becoming tools of their destruction. "This is why Earth went dark," Sarah explained, pushing the Defiant's fusion drives to their limit to avoid the attacks. "This is why we hid our quantum technology behind layers of primitive systems. The Voidborn can't corrupt what they can't detect." The massive enemy vessel launched swarms of smaller craft, each one a twisted combination of void matter and stolen technology. They moved with impossible grace, adapting instantly to any pattern of attack the Concordat ships attempted. "All vessels," Sarah broadcast, "execute Protocol Thunderbird. Remember what you've learned. Be unpredictable. Be human." Across the battlefield, the surviving Concordat ships began to move in ways their designers had never intended. Quantum cores remained dormant while fusion drives burned hot. Advanced weapons stayed silent while railguns and missile tubes roared. The elegant order of their usual combat doctrine gave way to controlled chaos. "Admiral," Sarah called, "I need your fastest ships. We're going to show the Voidborn something they've never seen before." The Defiant's hull rippled as Sarah engaged its most closely guarded secret. The ship's quantum core wasn't just hidden. It was distributed throughout its structure, woven into the very metal of its hull. Power that could tear holes in reality channeled not into weapons, but into every molecule of the ship itself. "Follow my lead," she ordered as several Concordat vessels formed up around her. "Match my movements exactly, but keep your advanced systems dark. Channel everything into your engines and inertial dampeners." The Defiant began to move in ways that violated physics itself, its entire structure acting as both quantum computer and drive system. The Concordat ships followed, their crews learning in desperate minutes what humanity had spent decades perfecting: how to hide impossible power behind simple actions. The Worldrender's swarms moved to intercept them, void matter tentacles reaching to corrupt and absorb. But they found themselves trying to grasp shadows. The combined fleet's movements followed no pattern, obeyed no logic their stolen technology could understand. "Now," Sarah commanded, "all ships, execute attack pattern Sierra 9. The Defiant led the charge, its hull blazing with quantum fire that looked like simple engine burn to sensors. Behind it, the Concordat ships launched salvos of primitive missiles that suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds as hidden quantum fields wrapped around them. The Worldrender's defenses, designed to counter either primitive or advanced attacks, couldn't adapt to weapons that were somehow both at once. Explosions rippled across its massive hull as the missiles struck home. Multiple breaches detected, the Defiant's disguised AI reported. "The enemy vessel's quantum matrix is destabilizing, but it's adapting. Subsequent attacks using this method will be less effective." "Then we change methods," Sarah replied. "This is humanity's greatest strength. We never do the same thing twice." The Defiant's hull shifted again, panels sliding aside to reveal what looked like crude chemical thrusters. The Concordat crews watched in confusion as Sarah ignited them, releasing clouds of what appeared to be simple rocket exhaust into space. "All ships, lock quantum containment fields on these coordinates," she ordered. "But keep them passive, don't let the Voidborn detect them."